We're on the scene with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. I'm moving back to give you a clearer view. At this time, officials are only confirming that a woman's body has been discovered. Authorities are looking to question this man regarding the disappearance of Chelsea Brookke. Your DNA was discovered on the tear in her costume's crotch, and again where the top was ripped open. Forensic analysis confirmed Daniel Clay's DNA on both the costume and the wig Brooke was last seen wearing. Her discovery was made by John Marin while he was excavating on his Ash Township property. He was the one who uncovered her skeletal remains. For the murder of Chelsea Brookke, Daniel Clay received a sentence of life in prison with no possibility of parole. On October 26, 2014, a Halloween party drew more than 600 people to a location just 15 minutes outside a small town. It was a scene of utter chaos, booze, drugs, and sex. 22-year-old Chelsea Brookke arrived with her friend, ready for the night's festivities. She was dressed as Poison Ivy, complete with black pants, a top covered in leaves, and a distinctive long purple wig. At 1:30 in the morning, a photograph was taken of her, a smile on her face. In that picture, she is alive, but by 3 a.m., witnesses described seeing her outside, looking distressed and trying to find a ride home. She couldn't call for help. Her phone was locked in her friend's car. She had to resort to asking strangers for a lift. Hours later, the party finally wound down. Chelsea, however, never returned home. Her bedroom was discovered empty. The investigation began, facing an enormous challenge. Over 600 attendees, many intoxicated, many in costume. The witness accounts were a mess. They clashed with one another time and time again. Then, a chilling discovery was made a few miles from the party. Her single red shoe. 6 months would pass before another piece of evidence surfaced part of her costume, violently torn at the groin and straps. A few weeks after that, the grim search ended when construction workers found her remains. The medical examiner determined she had been sexually assaulted and brutally killed. The details of this case are absolutely bone-chilling. But before we delve into the most disturbing part of this story, I'd love it if you'd drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and how the weather is over there. It genuinely helps support the channel's growth. And now, we'll go all the way back to the start to piece together every single thing that happened in the village of Maybe, Michigan. It's a place with fewer than 600 residents covering an area of only about 2 square miles. It's the definition of a quiet, rural town, a couple of small businesses, a few local diners, but mostly just open farmland and that quintessential small town feel. In 2014, Chelsea Ellen Brookke was living there, working alongside her family on their 160-acre farm. Friends of the 22-year-old remember her for an infectious smile and an even more generous heart. She could seem a bit reserved when you first met her, but as she warmed up, her hilarious and outgoing personality would shine through. She was always telling jokes. She had an unwavering, almost stubborn sense of optimism about life, and she was fiercely close with her family. Being the youngest of 5 kids, she and her sisters were so inseparable they called their group the Brookke Girls. For 4 years, Chelsea had worked as a hostess at Olga's Kitchen, and when she wasn't on the clock, she could be found with her friends, obsessed with movie soundtracks, playing video games, reading, or baking. But food was her true calling, her absolute passion. She was incredibly excited to be starting college, where she planned to study culinary arts and forge her own career path. It was clear she had big dreams and the drive to make them happen. On October 26, 2014, about a 15-minute drive from Maybe, you'll find Frenchtown Township. And on that night, it was the location of a massive Halloween party. To say it was just big doesn't begin to describe it. Mike Williams, the frontman of the rock band Pickaxe Preacher, was hosting his annual Halloween blowout, which felt more like a small festival than a simple party. There were live bands, fire breathers, vendors, and an enormous bonfire raging outside. And, of course, an abundance of alcohol and drugs. The event was so large that Mike had hired security and a team to direct parking on his huge property. But not even he could have anticipated how enormous the gathering would become. Over the course of the day and night, more than 600 people cycled through. That's a crowd larger than the entire population of Maybe, the town Chelsea called home. Chelsea and her friends were eager to be there. A costume contest with prizes had been announced, and Chelsea had poured a lot of work into her Poison Ivy costume. The 22-year-old showed up to the party with Rebecca, her best friend. By about 1:30 in the morning, the event was in full swing. That's when someone took a picture of Chelsea. It's just one fleeting moment, but she's absolutely glowing in it. She looks like she's having the time of her life clutching a prop bottle that read poison, which witnesses later said was full of cheap wine. Some attendees would later recall that she had been drinking quite a bit, fully embracing the party's wild energy. Yet others insisted she seemed completely composed, not nearly as drunk as some people were claiming. But recollections from that night are foggy, and the stories seem to change with every person you talk to. A few witnesses claim that at one point, Chelsea accidentally hit her head on a wooden pole, giving herself a cut on the forehead. They say it was right after that when she started asking anyone she could find for a ride home. Chelsea's costume didn't have any pockets, so she'd stashed her phone in her friend's car, so Rebecca went to get it for her. She told Chelsea, "Just wait here, I'll be right back." When Rebecca came back to that same spot, phone in hand, Chelsea had vanished. It was the last time Rebecca would ever see her. The friend who was supposed to be her ride home couldn't track her down either. But in a crowd that massive people constantly coming and going, it was probably naive to think they could stick together the whole night. It was entirely possible Chelsea had just bumped into other friends and taken off with them. After all, by all accounts, Mike's party had been an epic night. Everyone there had the time of their lives, even if the details were hazy the next morning. As the sun rose and the final partygoers headed home, already dreading the hangover that was sure to come, Chelsea's family was beginning to panic. She wasn't home, her bedroom was untouched, and her phone wasn't with her. It wasn't long before they called the police. She was quickly filed as a missing person, and detectives headed straight to the source, Mike's house. The moment they arrived, they realized this wasn't the kind of place you could just walk home from unless you were a close neighbor. The property was out in the country remote with twisting roads. The most logical explanation was that she'd gotten a ride with someone. Chelsea lived about 8 miles from there, and the property itself looked exactly like the aftermath of the massive party it had hosted. An absolute wreck. Outside, the embers of a huge bonfire were still smoking. Bottles and cans littered the entire area. Mike, the host, confessed he had no idea who Chelsea was, let alone that she'd even been at his party. That's just how massive the gathering had been. You could have been there all night and easily never run into her. He was completely devastated by the news. And despite the cloud of suspicion hanging over the party, he promised to cooperate in any way he could. Monica, these search parties are incredibly large, but you'd never know it from looking. I've watched at least half a dozen people walk into the cornfields right behind me, and they just vanish because the stalks are so high. We're also seeing several more volunteers gathering across the street. This is the very spot where that massive party took place, the last place anyone saw Chelsea alive. Yeah, I mean, there's some guilt there. That's why, I've just been trying to do everything possible to cooperate with everyone. I am just so sorry. I've been posting on Facebook, you know, trying to raise awareness about it, just hoping to God they find her. The guilt is clearly weighing on Michael Williams. He insists he played no part in the disappearance of 22-year-old Chelsea Brooks. I knew it was going to be a big crowd, but I never anticipated just how many people would actually show up. I ended up having to shut the whole thing down and start turning people away. Authorities estimate that Chelsea and her friends were among the 600 guests at Michael's Halloween bash on Saturday night. She was dressed as Poison Ivy, wearing fitted black pants, a top covered in leaves, and a long purple wig. Canine units, drones, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers scoured every last inch of his property and all the surrounding land. From the very beginning, it was obvious this investigation was going to be a monumental challenge. Almost everyone was in costume, many with their faces hidden by masks. And to complicate things further, alcohol and drugs were everywhere. Piecing together a clear timeline or even just a reliable guest list was proving to be nearly impossible. According to Monroe County Sheriff Dale Malone, most of the partygoers they questioned were so intoxicated they were of no help at all. Investigators were facing two major hurdles. Some witnesses remembered nothing, while others, trying to be helpful, gave accounts that were hopelessly muddled or unintentionally false. A few people recalled seeing Chelsea outside, upset and crying, apparently worried about how she was going to get home. Then another witness came forward, claiming that at around 3:00 in the morning, he spotted Chelsea walking away from the party with a man in a dark hoodie who was wearing large, thick framed dark glasses, and had side-swept bangs. I know, right? Um, that's such a common look these days. The glasses, the hair. So, you know, it's just really hard to say. I even told the police, like I said, I have no clue who that could be, who that guy was, or if that was even really her with him. No one could be certain. Police circulated a composite sketch of the individual last seen with Chelsea. One guest, a man named Haran Bird, gave a detailed statement claiming he'd stepped in when two men were bothering Chelsea and that she eventually left in a car with those same men. But for reasons unknown, his entire story turned out to be a complete fabrication. He was subsequently arrested for filing a false report. Then another tip came in from a woman named Carrie, who claimed her violent boyfriend had confessed to killing Chelsea that night, but that, too, was proven to be a lie. She ended up in handcuffs, charged with misleading investigators. The detective's theory? The entire story was a fabrication, cooked up purely out of spite for her ex. In the months that followed, the Facebook page dedicated to finding Chelsea Brookke swelled to over 12,000 members, while the reward for any information leading to her whereabouts steadily grew larger. More than 1 million flyers bearing Chelsea's face were circulated throughout the region. The search effort expanded so dramatically that it even reached beyond the nation's borders. Chelsea's 23rd birthday passed, marked only by her absence. Not long after, her sister's wedding day was shadowed by the heartbreakingly empty space at the altar where Chelsea was meant to stand. And then, finally, the investigation got its first real break. In a field just a few miles from the party, a single red shoe was discovered. It was confirmed to be Chelsea's. And then, about 6 months after she vanished, a piece of her poison ivy costume turned up in an industrial park. Tonight, a major update from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office concerning the disappearance of Chelsea Brookke. This could potentially be the huge break investigators have been desperately searching for. Following a tip, a 2-day search was conducted here at Blandon Peters in Flat Rock, where state police and deputies successfully collected clothing and other evidence. The costume was stained with blood. The fabric had been savagely ripped, as if it was torn from her body with extreme force. This wasn't an accidental snag or careful removal. It was violent. The seams were burst, straps had been yanked off, and the fibers themselves were stretched and distorted. The garment had clearly been left to the elements, battered by rain, wind, and dirt. It had been out there for far more than a day or two. And yet, despite all the exposure, investigators managed to find an unknown male's DNA profile on the costume right alongside Chelsea's blood. In spite of the brutal weather and the months that had slipped by, this crucial biological evidence had survived, providing a brand new starting point for the entire case. Investigators quickly realized the clothing was discovered a short distance from the home of Harlan Bird's grandmother. He was the very same man who had concocted the phony story about harassment at the party. It was a coincidence far too suspicious to dismiss. He was brought in for another round of questioning, grilled on the same questions, with every detail of his story scrutinized. He passed a polygraph test, which indicated no deception, and he willingly provided a DNA sample for comparison. But despite the strange connection, it proved to be just that, a coincidence. His DNA was not a match for the sample found on the costume. The lead that had once seemed so promising had just become another dead end. A few weeks after the costume was found, searchers made another finding. The tension immediately spiked again, because every new discovery could either bring them closer to the truth or pull the case deeper into mystery. Right now, the focus of the activity is about a quarter of a mile behind me, deep inside these woods. Far back in there, it remains a very active scene. State police are here, as is the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. I'm just going to step aside. All authorities are telling us at the moment is that the body of a woman has been located deep within this wooded area. I can confirm a crime lab truck is on site, and the sheriff of Monroe County himself is here, overseeing the scene. A construction crew clearing a derelict piece of land near old railroad tracks made a grim discovery: human remains in a shallow grave. One of the workers saw a flash of light-colored hair and had a sudden, chilling realization that it had to be Chelsea. And he was right. The purple ribbons tied to lampposts had long been a sign of the town's enduring hope that Chelsea was alive. Now, the news that it was her body that had been found struck like a physical blow. Everyone had always clung to the hope she was still out there, but with this discovery, that hope was extinguished. So, While this provides some sense of closure, it's still an incredibly rough reality to face. At Olga's in the Mall of Monroe, where Chelsea worked as a hostess, purple ribbons and ornaments had urged diners to keep her in their thoughts. And on the Facebook page that kept thousands informed during the search, her brother Nathan posted a short message yesterday thanking everyone for their support. He said that while the search for Chelsea had ended, the search for justice was only just beginning. Things like this happen everywhere, but when it's in a small town, everybody knows each other. You see them at church, you see them around, you just know them, you know? It's tough. It feels like you've lost one of your own. Chelsea had been left there naked. Her body was discarded, then carelessly covered with a layer of branches as if that could hide the crime, as if a few brittle limbs could erase what had been done to her. The location was about 10 miles from the party, a 10-mile journey from laughter, music, and light into the dead silence of the woods and absolute darkness. The medical examiner was unequivocal. She died from blunt force trauma to the head. It was not an accidental blow. It was not from a fall. According to the examiner, the damage was so catastrophic it could not have been inflicted by fists. A blunt object had been used as a weapon. The force was immense, it was repeated, and it was intentional. Her nose was broken, her jaw was shattered, her eye sockets were fractured. Two of her teeth had been knocked out. Each and every injury was a testament to the ferocity of the violence she suffered. This wasn't something that happened quickly. It was a sustained attack, a display of unrestrained brutality. By this time, more than a year had passed since she disappeared. The agonizing uncertainty her family had lived with every single day was now replaced by the cold, clinical details of a forensic report. This was no longer about a missing person. It had become a murder investigation. 1,000 tips, 800 interviews, 34 search warrants, 14 subpoenas, and the involvement of 50 law enforcement agencies. The statistics sound sterile, but each number represented a mountain of paperwork and exhaustive hours on the ground, from conversations to alibi verifications. All the while, the public appeals never stopped. Authorities urged people over and over to search their recollections, their camera rolls, their text messages, until finally, a new witness, a potential person of interest, was identified. The investigation crawled forward, one small piece at a time, assembling the fractured story of a girl who hadn't just disappeared. The image is grainy, but I want you to take a hard look at this photograph. Police were keen to speak with this man in relation to the disappearance of Chelsea Brooke, who vanished in October of 2014. While that was happening, the very man whose DNA was on Chelsea's costume essentially wandered right into the investigators' path. It wasn't because of some brilliant sting operation. It wasn't a sudden confession driven by guilt. It was the dry, methodical churn of the legal system. 27-year-old Daniel Clay had an extensive criminal past. His rap sheet detailed convictions for possessing controlled substances, theft, and illegal breaking and entering. It also included assault and even a charge for assaulting and resisting a police officer. This was far from a clean record. It was a clear pattern of offenses going back years. He had just been picked up for stealing someone's backpack. On the face of it, the charge was minor, but a new state law mandated that he provide a DNA sample. It was standard operating procedure, just a formality until that sample matched the DNA recovered from Chelsea's costume. The connection was undeniable, scientifically confirmed, and left no room for doubt. As if that weren't enough, another woman came forward, alleging that about a month before that DNA hit, Daniel Clay had attacked and raped her inside an apartment. Her testimony added yet another chilling layer to the portrait of the man now at the center of the investigation. Daniel was brought in for questioning, asked to account for his whereabouts on the night Chelsea vanished. He claimed he only recognized her from the news, the pictures, the frantic headlines, but he swore he'd never once crossed paths with her. When the detectives informed him that his DNA was discovered on her clothing, his response was immediate. That was impossible. His denial was swift and absolute. He acknowledged being at the same party. He admitted he was drinking heavily and using drugs that night. His memory, he insisted, was a fog. He recalled having sex with a woman in his car, but he was unshakably certain it couldn't have been Chelsea. Not her. He said it again and again. There was no way his DNA could have gotten on her costume. Absolutely not. But his denials couldn't erase the facts laid out on the detective's table. You told me you never had sex. Never had sex. Never. Nothing. Would there be any reason at all that your DNA would be with Chelsea Brooke? No. Or on her clothes or in her hair? Not to my knowledge. But the DNA told a different story, and the detectives were rapidly running out of patience. I think the thing is, Daniel, all right, is you had sex with a female that had dark hair in the back of your car, all right? You're telling me you left alone? There's a possibility. All right, a likelihood. And I say likelihood, which I'm 99.9% sure that it was Chelsea that you had sex with. I don't remember who I had sex with. I know. They told him in no uncertain terms that the time for games was over. They were past the point of accepting lies. Skin, right? From force, from a struggle. Your DNA cells were found where her crotch was torn and where her top was ripped from you grabbing her. Okay, so that's where your DNA was. I'm past that, okay, right? I know that you tore that. We're past or whatever. So, but it was torn. You had to tear it. I didn't. I'm not somebody. So there was, and this is the thing, all right? There had to be some stuff that happened. Listen to me, Daniel. We're past all that. All right, I have your DNA where her stuff was torn. Then the detectives took a calculated risk. They lied, telling him Chelsea had a condition that made her bones extremely fragile, that the slightest pressure could have caused a serious injury. In truth, she had no medical issues of the sort. Daniel took the bait almost instantly. Ah, like me, I break my fingers all the time because of that. So that's what happened. It was an accident. Something happened by accident. The problem is, we need to hear that from you, because I'm telling you right now, we know you're not some serial killer. People out there don't know that. Only we do. Daniel paused for a long moment, then said, all right, we messed around a little. After that, he asked for a cigarette. He confessed that she was the woman he'd been with in his car, but swore that when he left her, she was alive and completely fine. It could have gone down in one of three ways: deliberate, unintentional, or purely accidental. After a few more moments of intense questioning, Daniel's silence broke. His words came out haltingly, deliberately, as if he was carefully considering each one before speaking it aloud. He began, that night, I was high and drunk, driving on some back road when I spotted her on the shoulder. She was by herself, had no phone, no easy way to get home, so I offered her a lift. And from what he says, what followed was completely consensual. He was adamant that no violence occurred, that everything was mutual. That was the story he gave about that night. He claimed Chelsea was, to use his term, adventurous in bed, and that she supposedly asked him to choke her. The detail felt disturbingly rehearsed and out of place, a calculated effort to justify evidence that pointed to something far more sinister. In his version of events, he only choked her for about 30 seconds, a mere half minute. Then, he alleged, her breathing just ceased, as if it happened in an instant. Something utterly beyond his control. Just a horrible, tragic mishap. He claimed he panicked, tried to give her CPR, desperately attempted to revive her, but it was too late. His entire account felt like a constructed excuse, a way to minimize the gravity of his actions. But inside the courtroom, his words were being weighed against the stark reality of forensics, the brutal nature of her injuries, and the actual time it takes for someone to die that way. And at this point, every single detail became critical. This wasn't something you did on purpose. No, I never intended to hurt her. All right, in that case, you need to tell us exactly what took place. And yeah, things got pretty wild. We had sex. It got rough, like with the choking. She asked me to do it. I put my hands on her neck, and then she just went quiet, totally limp. I stopped immediately, started patting her face, and she just wasn't breathing. I stopped everything. I mean, I'm not about to keep having sex with someone who just passed out on me. I started tapping her. I kept tapping her. I'm trying to, shake her awake. I was doing this, trying to make her, I don't know, uh, bring her back or something. I just don't know. A major injury. The doctor claimed a car accident must have caused it. I'm telling you the truth, I can't remember. You get that without an explanation, you're going to come across as a monster, right? You understand that, right? I was completely blacked out. What do you want me to say? It's like you remember specifics. I do remember specifics. I remember pieces of it. You're saying you only remember fragments, but that specific fragment is the one we absolutely have to know about. I don't know. I remember doing this. pounding on her chest, trying to get her to wake up after I failed at the CPR. I was able to do the breaths here, the jaw thing. I seriously have no clue how that could have happened, unless maybe when I was getting her from the car, she hit the door or something, and it must have been a hell of a hit. I mean, not intentionally. I could see that happening. I could believe I might have done that by accident. He claimed he was in a state of utter shock and terror, just driving aimlessly for 30 to 45 minutes. You removed her from the vehicle, back on the road, you took her out of the car. How did you do it? Did you carry her? Did you drag her? I sort of just scooped her up and carried her. Daniel stated he drove out to the railroad tracks roughly 10 miles from where the party was and carried her body deep into a patch of woods. Well, at 6:43, we are tracking some major breaking news that developed overnight. There are new updates in the disappearance and death of 22-year-old Chelsea Brookke. Now, this information reached our newsroom at 11 o'clock last night. A 27-year-old man hailing from Newport, he is currently in custody this morning. Nick Monticelli was charged with murder in the second degree. He was also facing a sexual assault charge from an incident that took place a month prior. I'm sorry. Daniel Clay, offering an apology for his alleged crimes exclusively to our Action News cameras following his arraignment on second-degree murder charges. During his court appearance today, he informed the judge he would not seek bond, seemingly preferring to remain in a jail cell. The judge granted his request. Clay, who already had 10 arrests on his record, apparently confessed to his girlfriend from jail that he had picked up the 22-year-old Brooke after a Halloween party where a rough sexual encounter took a fatal turn. Action News has also learned from our sources today that the suspect had some of Brooke's personal belongings inside his residence. In the courtroom, Brooke's immediate family was seated in the front row, just an arm's length away from Clay. Others seated further back could be heard simmering with anger and frustration as they finally came face to face with the accused. They departed afterward without making a statement. Daniel's girlfriend, Kelly, she said he phoned her from his cell, admitting to it once more, yet he was adamant it wasn't on purpose. He told me he did it, she recounted, and I told him to stop lying and give me the real story. You get me? If you have any love for me, you'll tell me what really happened. I was just like, what is going on? He admitted it, she said, but claimed it was just a horrible accident. As it turns out, Daniel's ex, Jessica, the mother of his son, was one of Chelsea's co-workers. Their lives intertwined daily. They worked the same shifts, exchanged brief pleasantries, the kind of ordinary interactions you have at work. But in all the months following Chelsea's disappearance, Jessica recalled that Daniel had never once brought her up. He made no remarks, asked nothing about the case, and offered not a single ounce of compassion. It was as if he were a total stranger to the situation, just another person following the story on TV. That all shifted. However, on the very day he was taken into custody, that day, she found 2 voicemails from him waiting on her phone. The messages were a desperate apology. He said he'd made a terrible mistake and that he was going away for what would be a very long time. He wasn't explaining himself or denying anything, nor was he giving a full account, just broken phrases that felt like a final farewell. Despite those messages, he officially maintained his innocence. In the courtroom, he was adamant. He did not commit murder, and the prosecution had it all wrong. Subsequently, authorities added another charge against Daniel for concealing a body, and his second-degree murder charge was escalated to open murder. This was a significant strategic decision by the prosecution, broadening their legal avenues. The concept of open murder is a legal distinction mostly unique to Michigan. It provides the state with the ability to bring a murder charge against an individual without initially defining its severity. This leaves the determination to the jury or judge, who must then weigh the evidence to conclude if it constitutes first or second-degree murder. The ultimate verdict hinges on the evaluation of motive, the level of intent, and the surrounding circumstances of the crime. By May of 2017, Daniel Clay's trial was underway. Reporters, relatives, and spectators packed the courtroom once more. Photos, official reports, and forensic evidence, everything was about to be laid bare. The narrative pieced together over months of private investigation was now set to play out for all the world to see. 2.5 years after Chelsea Brookke vanished from that Halloween party, forensic specialists took the stand, detailing the grim discoveries made when her body was finally located. They described her costume, which was found largely undamaged, with 2 notable exceptions, The crotch area and one of the straps were torn. Specialists testified that the damage to the fabric was inconsistent with it being removed normally. Instead, it looked as if someone had violently ripped it open, possibly with keys. Investigators had found Daniel Clay's DNA on both the costume and the wig Brooke had been wearing. Her body was discovered by John Marin on his property in Ash Township while he was moving earth with heavy machinery. He was the person who stumbled upon her skeletal remains. I was checking out the dirt pile, trying to see if I had enough room to get the dozer back in there because it was a pretty tight spot. And that's when I glanced over to my left and saw the body. Clay's defense team put forth the argument that Brooke's death was a tragic accident that occurred during a consensual sexual encounter. In a tense cross-examination, the defense attorney pressed Brooke's friend about her sexual habits, asking point blank, did she enjoy rough sex? The kind that's, violent or aggressive? The answer was a firm no. Then, the mother of Clay's son, who had also been at that party, took the stand for the prosecution. She had made this incredible homemade costume out of leaves and things, and she had her purple wig on and her little honey pot. The witness testified that Clay never spoke of Brooke until the day of his arrest. He said he was incredibly sorry, and, please tell his son, please tell Bryson that I love him. I'm so sorry. And yeah, he said he'd be gone for a very, very long time. The prosecution laid out their theory of the crime, asserting that all the evidence pointed in one direction. It started with him offering her a ride home, a seemingly normal, innocent gesture, a simple act of kindness at the end of a long party. But she was stranded, her phone was gone, and she had no way to contact anyone. So she accepted the ride. For her, in that vulnerable moment, it must have seemed like a lifeline, her one chance to get safely home. But somewhere on that drive, the situation took a dark and violent turn. Instead of safety, she found herself trapped. Instead of a ride home, she met with brutal force. He attacked her, he sexually assaulted her, and then he ended her life. This was not an argument that got out of hand. It was a savage and merciless attack. The medical examiner took the stand, stating that due to the significant time elapsed between death and the discovery of the body, she couldn't be 100% certain, but she was 99.9% confident that strangulation was not the cause of death. Her testimony was delivered with detached, clinical precision. As she explained to the court, for strangulation to be fatal, a person must apply immense and continuous pressure for several minutes. It's not a momentary impulse or a brief action, it is a deliberate and sustained act of violence. But the fractures to her skull, nose, jaw, and eye sockets, along with her shattered teeth, told their own story. They were a testament to the sheer brutality of the blows she endured. What sparked outrage was the chilling realization that her suffering wasn't random, it was deliberate. And the state of her costume, shredded at the straps and between the legs, told a story far darker than any accident. It was a narrative that spoke for itself. That kind of damage doesn't just happen. Each detail was another piece falling into place, creating a single horrifying picture. Daniel made the choice to take the stand in his own defense. He was going to address the jury directly, look them in the eye, and present his side of the story, a narrative that had to somehow counter the mountain of forensic reports, official documents, and crime scene photos. A hush fell over the courtroom once more. Every single word out of his mouth would now be measured against the cold, hard facts. Was it your intention to cause her death? No, it was not. Did you murder Chelsea Brookke? No. Why are you so certain? Why do you deny it? Because I never wanted her to die. I never wanted any of this to happen. So there was Daniel Clay, on the stand, insisting to the court and the jury that Chelsea Brooke's death was a tragic accident, something he never intended. During cross-examination, the prosecutor zeroed in on the act Clay maintained was entirely consensual. You've stated repeatedly over and over again that this lasted no longer than 20 to 30 seconds. Is that correct? Yes. Isn't it possible, sir, that you're just adjusting your story to fit what the experts said about how long it takes for someone to lose consciousness? No. At this point, no one disputed that Daniel's actions led to Chelsea's death. He had confessed to that much. The real question for the jury was one of intent. Was it a deliberate act or a terrible mistake? It took the jury only a few hours to reach their decision. The verdict was guilty. Guilty of felony murder and the death of Chelsea Brooke, precisely the outcome the prosecution had fought for. Daniel Clay was found guilty. And make no mistake, this is still a first-degree murder conviction. What the jury essentially concluded was that the murder wasn't premeditated, but it did qualify as first-degree felony murder. This means they believe Chelsea Brooke was killed during the commission of another serious crime, either a kidnapping or a sexual assault. The verdict also sent a clear message. The jury had utterly repudiated Daniel Clay's story that the encounter was in any way consensual. The jury had several charges to consider. Beyond the 2 murder counts and concealing a body, they had the option of manslaughter if they had believed Daniel Clay's version of events. They chose not to. But when the foreman read the first part of the verdict, a sharp gasp cut through the courtroom, a moment of pure uncertainty about what would follow. Listen, we the jury find as follows. Count 1, first-degree murder. Not guilty. Felony murder. Guilty. We are satisfied with the jury's decision. We believe it was a just verdict, thoroughly supported by the evidence presented. At the sentencing hearing, Chelsea's mother, Leandra Brooke, addressed the court. She turned to face Daniel directly and told him she forgave him. The room fell into an absolute, breathless silence. In a moment where everyone anticipated rage, venom, and raw hatred, she offered something else entirely. She wore purple, her daughter's favorite color. It was a silent, powerful tribute, a splash of memory that was impossible to overlook. Pinned to her chest was a Crime Stoppers button bearing Chelsea's face, a photograph of her smiling, an image now transformed into a symbol for the justice they had fought for. In her hands, she clutched a Bible, and then she offered it to him. With a steady hand and a calm voice, she explained that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't erase the pain. It wasn't a sign that the wound had closed. Instead, she said, it was a necessary act for her own survival to keep the agony from consuming her from within. Her voice was gentle, yet unwavering, carrying the immense weight of a choice forged in unimaginable loss. The moment was devoid of theatrics, no raised voices, no grand displays of emotion. It was simply a mother confronting the man who had stolen her child's future. And he just sat there, his face a complete blank, showing no reaction, no feeling at all. His gaze was empty and far away, as though her words were nothing more than sounds in the air, powerless to move him. That cold, vacant stillness was profoundly disturbing, more chilling than any words he could have spoken. Leandra explained that Chelsea's death held a terrible lesson, the kind no one should ever have to learn, paid for at an unthinkable price. It was a lesson in trust, in being careful, a lesson in how a single moment, one choice, a chance meeting, can irrevocably alter the course of a life. But she wasn't just talking to him anymore. Her words were meant for everyone in that room, and for anyone who would hear her story. And her voice carried more than just sorrow. It held the resolve of a woman refusing to be swallowed by the darkness. Never leave your friends by themselves. If you head out with someone, no matter where you go, make sure you return with them. Never just assume they'll be all right. We keep expecting her to just walk in through the back door. The judge, too, had some scathing remarks reserved for the defendant. Let me be crystal clear. I see you for what you are. A liar, a rapist, and a murderer. For the murder of Chelsea Brookke, Daniel Clay was given life in prison with no possibility of parole. The sentence was mandatory, leaving zero chance he would ever be released. A sentence like that has only one meaning. He will die behind bars. No early release, no leniency, and absolutely no second chances. On top of that, he was handed an additional 40 to 75 years for the sexual assault of a woman inside her own apartment. This was a completely separate incident, a different victim entirely. It was just more proof that his actions were anything but an accident. The judge described it as a brutal and humiliating rape, an attack that robs a person of their dignity and inflicts invisible wounds that never truly fade. When those formal, measured words were uttered, the courtroom fell completely silent, every syllable dripping with condemnation. Mr. Clay, you are an opportunist and a predator. You are a liar, and now you are a serial rapist. That wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a cold, final, and calculated conclusion. Daniel Clay attempted to change his fate by filing an appeal, but his sentence was upheld. The court saw no justification for reducing it. The ruling remained firm and irreversible. To honor Chelsea's memory, a scholarship was founded within the culinary arts program at Monroe County Community College, the very school she had been planning to attend, the place where her future was supposed to unfold. Now, her name is spoken in those halls in a different context, not as a student, but as a cherished memory, a somber reminder of a dream that was stolen before it could ever be realized. Another Halloween party drew to a close, the lights dimmed, the music faded into silence. Costumes were pulled off and carelessly tossed aside. A night among friends, a mix of laughter, celebration, and playful chaos concluded like so many nights just like it. People made their way home, already thinking about the stories they would tell the next day, ready to exaggerate the details, cringe at the awkwardness, and scroll through their phone's photo gallery. All Chelsea Brooke wanted was to make her way home. She probably thought she would wake up the next morning and laugh about the night she'd had, dissecting the costumes, recalling who said what, and who danced with whom. Her night was supposed to be about escaping into a fantasy, just as Halloween always is. But her case is a horrifying reminder that real monsters walk among us. They rarely appear dangerous. They don't have fangs. They don't lurk in the shadows. And they have no need for masks or costumes to conceal their true nature. The nightmare that Chelsea lived through was all too real. It had no special effects, no script, and no opportunity for a second take. If you want to help us continue to tell these important stories, please support the channel by subscribing, liking this video, and leaving us a comment. It genuinely helps our channel grow and motivates us to create even more in-depth, high quality, and detailed content for you. I'll see you in the next story.